Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 235. Mount Jiao going all the way. How? Mo Ran took a step back, shook his head, and muttered, "How is this possible? Is it really you?" "Yes, it's this venerable one." Taxian Jun looked at him slowly and then smiled. "Well, I thought that after you were reborn, you wouldn't remember much about your past life, but looking at you now, it seems like you remember everything. And looking at your expression, you seem to have guessed about this venerable one's existence. If that's the case, you're not too stupid." Mo Ran mumbled. He had a lot to say with words that were about to come out of his throat, but in the end, he could only shout in disbelief, "But you're dead. Oh. You've taken that poison back in the Wushan Palace. That powerful poison. There was no way you could have survived that. You died in front of the sky-reaching pagoda and was buried in a coffin under the flowering tree. You're already dead." Taxian Jun chuckled. "That's not a good enough." As he spoke, he slowly raised his eyes, and revealed a sarcastic smile. His eyes were like the sharp beak of a bird of prey, ready to peck through Grandmaster Mo's body. "Why don't this venerable one offer one answer for you?" he said softly, with the calmness of one who was toying with people in the palm of his hand. He chuckled and continued, "Yes, this venerable one indeed died, and the person who can prove that this venerable one is already dead is standing in front of this venerable one right now. Mo Ran. It's because you're the spirit soul that this venerable one escaped from." Taxian Jun laughed, "The most benevolent Grandmaster Mo. Across the world, there are people who often tell me about your, how should this venerable one put it, heroic deeds." He sneered. "You're so interesting. This venerable one thought you didn't remember much about your past life, which was why you could pretend like nothing happened. But you actually remember everything." Mo Ran gritted his teeth. "Ah, Grandmaster Mo, do you think that as long as you keep silent, no one will know the truth? Do you think that as long as you put down the killer's blade, you can start all over again? Most importantly, do you think?" Taxian Jun suddenly became even more ruthless. He gripped Chu Wanning's neck, his nails digging deep into his flesh. He pinched Chu Wanning until his skin turned purple. Chu Wanning furrowed his brows in anger, but he couldn't say a word. "Do you really think that this venerable one will be so kind and let you enjoy the light alone when there is no more fire in my world? Don't touch him." Taxian Jun sneered, "Don't touch him? Don't you think it's ridiculous for you to say that to this venerable one?" With Chu Wanning in his arms, he slowly walked in circles. He and Mo Ran looked at each other. Taxian Jun stared at Grandmaster Mo. Mo Ran stared at Mo Weiyu. The past life was staring at the current one. Taxian Jun mocked him, "Don't you know how this venerable one touched him? Now you're pretending to be a good person. Don't say it." Why not? Do you think those things are uncomfortable and unpleasant? After so many years, life and death are fleeting. Don't you think it's time to talk about it?" Mo Ran couldn't help but shake his head. His expression was even more distorted than Chu Wanning's. He was angry, helpless, guilty, and desperate. "Don't say it. Oh, you want this venerable one to shut up so badly. How interesting, our wise and kind Grandmaster Mo, at this moment, seems to be." Taxian Jun thought for a while and spat out the words, "Very scared." Mo Ran couldn't wait any longer. He looked at Chu Wanning being tightly held in Taxian Jun's arms, and a violent emotion surged through his heart. He didn't know exactly what to do. He just wanted to stop this demon in front of him from talking. He just wanted to bury all the ugliness of the past in the ground and seal it in a coffin. Jiangui rose and suddenly attacked Taxian Jun. The red sparks crackled, its red flames were even more ferocious than before. Avoiding the attack, Taxian Jun's expression changed slightly. "Tianwen." No, as soon as he finished speaking, he already knew the answer. The red light of the willow vine could not be Tianwen's. Your holy weapon is very interesting. Taxian Jun's expression was slightly complicated. He stared at the vine whip for a moment, then looked up at Mo Ran. His expression got even colder. If that's the case. As he spoke, he flew back and handed Chu Wanning to one of his men behind him. He then raised his hand and summoned Buletin Gui. Come, let's fight. This venerable one is curious, which one is more powerful, when I'm wielding Buletin Gui or when I'm wielding a vine whip. Taxian Jun then ran his finger on the length of his saber. Buletin Gui's green light surged and its spiritual power reached its peak. At the same time, Grandmaster Mao ran his finger through his willow vine. Jianghui's red light overflowed as its flame burned fiercely. Fire attribute. Taxian Jun sneered, although this venerable one have a dual attribute of wood and fire, this venerable one clearly remember that I'm better at using wood, not fire. Why did you change your temperament? Mo Ran kept silent and did not answer. His expression was cold and solemn. He pursed his lips tightly and there was a trace of sadness in his eyes. Those were the eyes of a person standing on the edge of a cliff, teetering on its edge. Clang! Two figures that were almost identical leaped into the air and clashed fiercely in midair, pouncing and tangling with each other. Jianghui and Buletin Gui roared noiselessly as a torrential spiritual current flowed out. It was as if a flood dragon had encountered a huge whale, or a raging flood had struck a ferocious beast. In a split second, the bricks of the dragon's soul hall were scattered in all directions. Stones and sand flew everywhere. Their surging frenzied current even raised the magma of the dragon blood pool. Everyone attached spiritual power to their feet to prevent the overflowing liquid magma from burning them. Taxian Jun and Grandmaster Mo were no exception. The two of them fought fiercely, seeming to be evenly matched. The blades clashed and the vines danced like the wind. The black shadow pounced towards another black shadow, its bloody eyes locked onto desperate ones. Every move was an uttermost as flame and lightning surged wildly. There was another sharp sound of colliding weapons. The two of them tiptoed and soared into the air. The vine whip and the saber hit each other and the splashing spiritual power reflected on the two pale faces. One of them died and came back to life. The other was nothing but death. During the power struggle, Taxian Jun's eyes were filled with thousands of snowflakes. He shouted, Buletin Gui, quench the spirit. Grandmaster Mo gritted his teeth and said slowly, Jianghui, quench the spirit. In an instant, their spiritual power each rushed into their own holy weapon. The two holy weapon each emitted a bright light, the red light and the blue light rushed to kill each other. In the end, a loud bang was heard. Buletin Gui hit Mo Ran's shoulder while Jianghui pierced through Taxian Jun's left arm. Both of them groaned and fell to the ground, one on the left and one on the right. They panted but seemed to not feel the pain of their wounds at all. All of their attention was on each other. They were like fierce beasts fighting in a cage, a do-or-die battle. Taxian Jun's eyes were gloomy as he commented, the way you use the vine whip is too similar to him. Him naturally referred to Chu Wanning. Grandmaster Mo didn't want to waste any more time with Taxian Jun. His eyes flashed with killing intent, why don't you just get lost? You want this venerable one to get out of the picture. Taxian Jun sneered, Mo Weiyu, what right do you have? You've been wearing the sheep's skin for a long time. Don't tell me you've forgotten that there's still sheep's blood on your lips. Before they even finished talking, they leaped up again and started to fight again. Taxian Jun rushed forward. The lava under his feet was boiling and sparks were flying everywhere. But how could Mo Ran not be aware of his moves? It was as if he was looking at his own reflection in the lake. Before Taxian Jun's blade fell, he had already retreated a few feet. Under his feet, the sun was blazing and the fire was flowing. The two of them advanced and retreated. Every move they made was within the opponent's expectation. In the blink of an eye, they had fought for more than 100 rounds. They were evenly matched and neither of them could gain the upper hand over the other. Moran's forehead was full of sweat while Taxian Jun was also breathing heavily. They were still circling and staring at each other, trying to read each other's next move. Sweat seeped into the dark space between his eyebrows. It froze for a moment and then suddenly dripped down. Moran gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "What are you doing all of this for? I've said it before, this venerable's whole world is gone. Don't be delusional and think that you can monopolize the last fire." Moran suddenly became angry, "That will also be your last fire. But this venerable one can't get him." Taxian Jun said coldly, "Besides, is there a difference between you and this venerable one? Is it because my hands are full of blood and yours were clean? Why is it that this venerable one can only live his life in a drunken stupor alone in the long night, while you can protect Shimei, Chu Wanning, and your ridiculous uncle and cousin? Why is it only you?" Moran heard him say this and was suddenly startled. After a while, he said, "You've had them as well before." Moran looked at himself in his previous life. He had always said this in his heart but had never said it out loud before. Now he murmured, "You've had them before but you've stepped on it. You've extinguished the fire with your own hands." Taxian Jun's expression suddenly became extremely dangerous. His nose wrinkled slightly and there seemed to be waves of evil in his eyes. He was so miserable that he even changed the way he addressed himself. "I destroyed him. Ridiculous. Are you sure it wasn't him who destroyed me? You don't know the truth about the heavenly rift at all." "I don't need to know." Taxian Jun said coldly, "Mo Weiyu, it's all too late. I think it's good this way. As long as he's alive, he's my man and I can control him in the palm of my hand. It doesn't matter if he's happy or not. It doesn't matter if he hates me or resents me. It doesn't matter." He paused, "I just want to see him." Moran's voice was filled with anger and pain. He was torn by shame and foreboding. He trembled slightly. "You've already destroyed him once and in the process, destroyed yourself. You still want to destroy him in this world, for the second time." Taxian Jun smiled. His deep dimples showed as he looked back and forth at Moran's face. Then he said, "What's there to destroy? You think too much. It doesn't matter if this person is dead or alive. As long as you can control him, you can do whatever you want." Moran shook his head, closed his eyes, and said hoarsely, "You're wrong. You shouldn't treat him like this. He's the person who treats you the best in this world." "That's ridiculous." Taxian Jun's smile suddenly tightened. "He's the person who treats me the best in this world? Then what about Shimei?" "Grandmaster Mo, you're being ridiculous. The person you should be thinking about is clearly Shimei Jing, who's always been gentle to you and never looked down on you. You're telling me that Chu Wanning is the best person in this world? Do you know what you're saying? You're the one who doesn't know what you're saying." They were so close to each other that their spiritual powers were colliding with each other. Moran's eyes were red as he said, "He treats you sincerely with all of his heart, but he's very clumsy. There are many things that he does so lamely and doesn't tell you. Wake up, the person you like is not Shimei. All these years, when have you ever had any thoughts about Shimei in that way? When you were lying on the empty bed in the Wushan Palace, who was the person you were thinking about? This venerable one don't deny that he's very pleasurable to fuck." Taxian Jun said indifferently, "But so what? He can never replace Shimei." When Moran heard him say that, he was obviously talking about himself in his previous life, but he was so angry that his blood rushed to his head. He gritted his teeth and said, "You're not allowed to insult him." Taxian Jun narrowed his eyes. "Why are you so protective of him? Did you sleep with him again? In this life, you slept with him too." His narrowed eyes were like that of a snake. The strength and spiritual power in their hands had not stopped flowing. The powerful technique even made the other chess pieces unable to withstand it. Some of them even curled up on the ground. Taxian Jun stared at Mo Ran for a while, then his eyes fell on Chu Wanning. He murmured, "Grandmaster Mo, I heard that in this world, Shi Mei is still alive but you treat him like this." For a moment, Mo Ran did not know how to argue with this guy who came from the gate of time and space, life and death. He also did not know how he got resurrected. In the end he only asked, "What about you? Now that you've come to this world where Shi Mei is still alive but when I came in, you still came after my Shizun? Your Shizun?" Taxian Jun rolled his eyes and said sarcastically, "Ha, you know very well what kind of relationship your Shizun has with this venerable one. Do you think this venerable one can hold him?" Mo Ran wanted him to let go of Chu Wanning, so he said, "Do you feel this way about Shi Mei? Shi Mei is such a pure person. Of course, he cannot be desecrated." Taxian Jun said languidly, "Chu Wanning is different. He looks cold, insufferably arrogant, strong, and conceited. But have you forgotten how he looks like when he is getting fucked?" Mo Ran did not expect him to be so lascivious and straightforward. He was stunned. Then, he couldn't help but think of Chu Wanning's muffled moans while he was underneath him. Even though he didn't want to, he thought of how Chu Wanning had finally succumbed to his desires under the influence of the most intense and largest dose of aphrodisiac in his previous life. He had tangled with him crazily, taking the initiative to cater to him. Their sex was as intense then, they go at it like rutting beasts. That pair of eyes that were full of shame and unwillingness slightly closed. Chu Wanning's eyes lost focus, his mouth slightly opened and he couldn't stop panting. He suddenly closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they were full of anger. "I'm not like you. In this life, I still haven't what?" This time, it was Taxian Jun who didn't understand. He felt that he had never pitied Chu Wanning, so he couldn't imagine Mo Ran's love and restraint in bed. After a while, he finally realized what was going on from the other man's indignant and embarrassed eyes. However, he was even more stunned after realizing what was going on. "Are you kidding me? Don't tell me you and him haven't." Mo Ran gritted his teeth. "Damn it." Jiangui, the red sparks almost materialized, tearing the whole Dragon Soul Hall apart. Taxian Jun suddenly laughed, "Grandmaster Mo, at this moment, I suddenly feel that you and this venerable one are not related at all. Are you still me?" The two of them faced off, one was like a mad dog, the other was like a loyal dog. The mad one was baring his teeth and laughing at him. The loyal one was silent and sorrowful, stubbornly and firmly confronting him. It was just that the look on the loyal dog's face when he was faced with the monstrous past that he had cast down was actually extremely pitiful and helpless. It was hard to tell who would emerge victorious in this battle. Taxian Jun was gradually getting tired of it. He suddenly said, "All right, this venerable one played with you enough. Grandmaster Mo, let's see the real thing." As he said, he waved his hand, and those Zhenlong chess pieces that had listened to his orders and stood motionless at the side all rushed forward. Mo Ran was attacked from the front and back, and couldn't escape. "This is your real thing." Taxian Jun retreated from the fierce battle and walked toward Chu Wanning. As he walked, he looked back and sneered, "I'm a chess piece, so I'm naturally a part of my battle strength. How is this not real?" Mo Ran looked at him holding Bulet and Gui, gently patting Chu Wanning's cheek with the blood-stained blade and then fiercely pinching Chu Wanning's face, saying something sweet to him. He couldn't bear it anymore. In his anger, he forgot that Chu Wanning seemed to have some kind of unpleasant connection with Bulet and Gui. He shouted, "Bulet and Gui, no." The saber flashed and actually shook in Taxian Jun's hand. It seemed to be hesitating and struggling. It didn't know who it should listen to. Taxian Jun slightly raised his eyebrows and looked down at his own blade. "Oh? Do you want to listen to him?" However, it was with this voice that Chu Wanning suddenly felt a splitting pain in his skull. The messy fragments of the dreams that he had before covered his mind, like rolling sand. Scarlet curtain, pungent beast fur. Limbs intertwined. Outside the hall, kneeling and the arrogant mockery of the palace maids. Taxian Jun felt that something was wrong with him, so he lifted his hand to remove the mute spell and said, "What's wrong with you?" Chu Wanning didn't answer. He was feeling unbearable pain and his whole head felt like it was going to split open. He saw the ashes of the skeleton that covered the sky and blotted the sun. The blue sky was filled with ashes. A man in black robes stood between heaven and earth. Corpses were everywhere and the people were in a terrible situation. Shizun. The man turned around, and it was Mo Ran's face. He grinned and smiled evilly. He was holding something bright red in his palm. Looking at it carefully, it was a heart that was still beating. "You finally arrived. Are you here to stop me?" With a slight tug of his hand, the heart exploded in his hand, revealing the sparkling and dazzling spirit core inside. Mo Ran sucked the spirit core into his palm. He walked towards him slowly. "I can't believe that you and I, master and disciple, can't escape from this battle in the end." Chu Wanning suddenly closed his eyes as the veins on his forehead throbbed. Taxian Jun felt that there was something wrong with his expression, so he raised his fingertips, touched his cheek and then lifted his chin. "What's wrong? Where does it hurt?" Chu Wanning was slightly trembling under his fingertips. Taxian Jun misunderstood and frowned. "I didn't hurt you, how did you become so weak?" Seeing that Chu Wanning still didn't speak, he frowned and seemed to want to say something, but before he could open his mouth, he heard a heavy cracking sound outside. Taxian Jun's expression changed slightly. Someone broke the barrier of Mount Jiao by force. His eyes were like lightning as he suddenly turned his head. He saw an apricot yellow shadow flying over and its momentum was amazing. The way it moved was strange and gloomy, like that of a ghost. In the blink of an eye, Chu Wanning was caught in the palm of that person's hand. Mo Ran called out, "Shizun." Taxian Jun exclaimed, "Wanning." The two men who shouted at the same time looked at each other and there was disgust in each other's eyes. But soon, Mo Ran and Taxian Jun both turned their heads again and stared at the uninvited guest floating in the air with his frock fluttering in the wind. Master Huizhui. Huizhui's face didn't look so good. Compared to 5 years ago, his face was a lot more haggard, but the sharpness in his eyes didn't decrease at all. It was still like the light of the river and the sea, rippling and surging. Mo Ran's heart relaxed. He didn't know why Huizhui suddenly appeared here, but since this person was willing to use the art of rebirth to save Chu Wanning, he wouldn't harm his Shizun. But Taxian Jun had never seen him before. His expression as he addressed him was very dangerous. "Bald donkey, where did you come from? Why do you want to be my enemy?" Huizhui glanced at him and then his eyes fell on Mo Ran. He didn't seem to be surprised by the appearance of two Mo Weiyu at the same time. On his face, there was more of a kind of expression, not surprise, but worry. "Benefactor Mo." Huizhui waved his sleeve. There were too many people here and in order to keep Taxian Jun from hearing it, he used the sound transmission spell to send the sentence directly to Mo Ran's ears. "I can't stay here for long, quickly come to Mount Longxiu to see me." He paused and added the following words, "You have to come quickly." Then, just like how he came, he left like a gust of wind and disappeared in an instant. These Zhenlong chess pieces and the barrier of Mount Qiao seemed to be unable to stop him. There was even a moment when Mo Ran saw that a cultivator had already grabbed his arm, but in the next moment, Huizhui's figure was already far away from the hall door. That cultivator's hand had nothing in it but only a mass of cold air. Taxian Jun wanted to rush to catch up to Huizhui, but at this time, a sharp whistle suddenly came from the sky. His expression froze and he cursed under his breath. At this time, the whistle was sharp and ear-piercing. His eyebrows furrowed. He glanced at Mo Ran and although he was unwilling, he still pointed his finger in the air, count yourself lucky. Next time you and this venerable one will have a chance to fight to the end. Then, he led the rolling waves of chess pieces and quickly retreated in the direction of the soul summoning platform. This fierce battle started abruptly and it also ended just as quickly. In a moment, Huizhui disappeared and so did Taxian Jun. There was no one left in the Dragon Soul Hall. Mo Ran chased Taxian Jun to the soul summoning platform but saw Taxian Jun jumped up and rushed towards the center of the dark circling formation. Those Zhenlong chess pieces followed closely behind him. One by one, they were swallowed up by the boundless darkness in an instant. After the last wave of cultivators entered, the formation immediately began to shrink and distort before completely disappearing into the night. Only a crescent moon remained in the sky with a hint of glowing scarlet. The gate of space and time, life, and death closed. Mo Ran stood on the soul summoning platform where the north wind blew. He looked at the boundless night sky, looked at the mess on the ground and only felt a burst of coldness, unable to return to his senses for a long time. All of this was like a dream, but he knew it wasn't. He knew clearly in his heart that everything that happened today was only the beginning. He was a ghost that escaped from the purgatory. Some things might take some time but in the end there was really no way to escape it. The monstrous sins that he had committed were like a sharp sword, hanging over his head. Finally, he was going to get for his punishment that could take his life. He seemed to be able to see Taxian Jun's pair of ferocious red eyes as he laughed and said, "Atonement? How can you atone? You and I are the same. You will never be able to wash away the blood on your body." He seemed to be able to see the Xuemeng from his previous life screaming at him, "Mo Weiyu. I hate that I can't cut you into pieces. I won't forgive you even if you get reincarnated." He seemed to be able to hear the terrifying sound of Song Kaiyutong falling into boiling oil, her screams that got abruptly cut off. He seemed to be able to heard himself saying to Ye Wangzi that out of the 72 cities of the brilliant Rufeng sect, not a single one was a man. He seemed to be able to see Su Xuanglin standing in front of Ye Wangzi, his face full of determination and anxiety as Ye Wangzi shouted Yufu, her voice was like a sharp awl piercing the ear. Blood flowed like a stream. Finally, in the swaying light and shadow, in the stench of the past, in the nightmare of yesterdays, he saw the figure of a person. It was pure white and serene. He was standing under the Haitang tree and then turned his head. Under the shadows of the sky, he smiled slightly. "Mo Ran. It was me who had wronged you. Be it in life or death, I won't blame you." He suddenly knelt down. He, who had gone through an entire night of bloody battle, was now in a pitiful state and was covered in blood. Under the reflection of the bright moon in the sky, he was stunned for a moment, and then curled up like an ant. His entire body arched on the ground, and he began to sob and tremble. "Shizun! Shizun!" He howled in grief. He choked with sobs. "It's not like that, it wasn't me. I beg you. I beg you, that's not me. I want to turn back. I want to start over. I would pay any price. I'm begging you. I will willingly take out my own here, as long as you don't let me die as Taxian Jun. I really don't want to be that person anymore. I beg you." He thought of Xuemeng, then he thought of Shimei. He thought of when he was young, Xuemeng gave him a stick of candied haws and arrogantly told him that he didn't want it himself. He thought of when he left, Xuemeng teared up and grabbed his collar, and said to him, "Tanga, don't lie to me." He thought of when he was young, Shimei came to him with a steaming hot wonton soup and said to him, "Mo Ran, I don't have parents either, so we're going to be a family in the future, all right." He thought of Shimei on the spirit summoning platform with blood and tears flowing down his eyes. He said, "Actually, you've never understood me." Then he thought of Xue Zhenyang and he thought of Madame Wang. He thought of how they died in his previous life. He thought of Xuemeng's face, which was immersed in a sea of blood. He thought of Chu Wanning. He suddenly choked with sobs. His fingers dug into the ground so hard that his knuckles were scraped and his skin was torn. What do I do? What should I do? He was like a trapped beast that had been whipped until his skin was torn and his bones were mangled. He howled in despair and grief. At this time, he suddenly understood. He had thought that Taxian Jun was an outsider to this mortal world, but what about him? Wasn't he the same? He suddenly didn't know where was the most peaceful place in this world. He suddenly didn't know if his old friends were still around and who could forgive him. He was an outsider, too. He curled up and trembled. He wailed and hugged himself tightly. Just like how he was many years ago in that mass grave, beside his mother's rotting corpse. He cried and he didn't know where to go. He didn't know where his home was. At this moment, he was even more miserable than when he was young. He suddenly wasn't so sure. Mo Weiyu, who exactly was he? Taxian Jun? Grandmaster Mo? A seventh generation of the Nangong family? The second young master of Shi Shengpeak? Was he an unforgivable devil or the kind and righteous grandmaster? All of a sudden, he shattered into pieces. Each of the pieces was so sharp that it was enough to slice him 1,000 times over and destroy him in one fell swoop. Dead. Alive. He was always alone. I'm not Taxian Jun. He muttered. It was cold. The soul summoning platform was too cold. Every inch of his muscles and bones were shivering. He closed his eyes as his tears fell down. He sobbed, I'm not Taxian Jun, what do I do? I really don't know what to do, forgive me, spare me. But who should he beg for forgiveness? Chu Wanning? His past self? The countless ghosts and vengeful souls that died at his hands? No one could give him forgiveness. No one could. He buried his face in his palms. In this desolate world, he finally choked with sobs. What the hell? Just what should I do? End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 236. Mount Longxiu, Parinirvana. After coming out of Mount Xiao, Moran was like a wooden sculpture. His eyes were slightly blank as he walked forward in silence. Standing in front of a fork in the road, he was in a daze. The great battle was over. The sun rose from the east and the morning glow washed away the darkness of the night. Only the smell of dewdrops and grass remained in the forest, like greasy powder floating in the morning light. He turned around and looked at the towering mountain range. Then he looked at the road in front of him. If he walked straight, he would reach Linling Isle. Xuemeng and his uncle were waiting for him there. They were waiting for an explanation, for an answer. But he couldn't go there. He had to go to Mount Longxiu. Moran vaguely understood that Master Huizhui knew far more than he thought. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so calm when he saw Taxian Jun. Perhaps it was because of this that he was increasingly feeling at a loss. He didn't know what was waiting for him at Mount Longxiu. His mind was truly in a mess. He wasn't in the right disposition to think clearly, but he instinctively understood that he had to go to Mount Longxiu because his Shizun was there. Mount Longxiu was located near Wuobei Temple. In the early years, monks would occasionally come to the mountain to meditate, practice Zen and cultivate, but this mountain somehow denied other people. Many people said that they encountered ghosts near the mountain and hit some sort of barrier whenever they tried to enter it. It confounded them. The one who managed to enter it, never come out again. So gradually, it became a barren mountain. Moran traveled on his sword. After a day of traveling, he finally arrived at the foot of Mount Longxiu at sunset. He hadn't eaten or drunk all day and was already very tired. So, when he saw a stream of clear spring water flowing out from the cypress trees, he walked over and scooped up a handful of water to wash his face. What came out was mud, then washed out blood. Finally, his face was revealed, reflected in the rippling water. It wasn't an ugly face, but after Moran stared at his reflection for a while, he felt an unspeakable disgust and hatred. He suddenly broke the water surface, shattering the reflection. Then he closed his eyes and rubbed his face with his palms, almost painfully. Was there any perfect method in this world that could completely separate a person's past from their present? Was there any sharp weapon that could remove the rotten memories from his mind? Was there anyone who could save him? Could they tell him that he was not Taxian Jun? That he was just Moran, just Mo Weiu? But when he opened his eyes, the ripples were placid again and the man in the water was still staring at him with resentment and despair. He knew he had no way out. He got up and went up the mountain. When he was halfway up the mountain, fog suddenly rose up. It was so thick that one wouldn't be able to see their fingers if they held it out in front of them. At first, Moran thought it was some sort of sneak attack, but when he sensed it, there was no trace of evil or malicious intent in it. It was getting late. Occasionally, the sound of birds could be heard from the woods. The surroundings were getting colder as the sunlight slowly disappeared. The surroundings were getting dark. Shizun. His voice was slightly hoarse as he walked forward while rubbing his hands. Master Huizhui. No one answered him. However, it was strange that even though he was climbing the mountain blindly, he didn't encounter any obstruction. This path was so smooth that it made one's hair stand on end. It was as if someone had long set up a trap in the depths of the fog, waiting for him to walk into it. Is there anyone here? The fog gradually dissipated. The scenery in front of him became clearer and clearer. The thick fog gradually dissipated. The mountain rocks and vines appeared in front of him. He found that he had unknowingly arrived at a flat and open area. Looking back, the path he came from was still covered by the fog. Only this area had lush vegetation and sparse moonlight. He stepped on the withered grass that was full of dew and walked forward. Then, he saw the back of a person. Moran was startled for a moment. Then, he ran forward in panic and anxiously called out, Shizun. Chu Wanning had his back to him. He was kneeling beside a cave covered by wisteria. In front of him, Master Huizhui was sitting cross-legged with his eyes lowered. His expression was sorrowful and silent. Shizun. Are you? He was suddenly at a loss for words when he saw Chu Wanning turn around. His eyelashes were wet and there were traces of tears on his face. Moran was startled as he asked, "What's wrong?" Chu Wanning didn't speak. He had always been a person who suppresses his emotions. Since a long time ago, he had always been aloof, serious, majestic and awe-inspiring. It seemed that ever since he was born, he was already an elder, an immortal cultivator, as if there wasn't a time when he was young and weak. Moran. But this time, it was as if he used all his strength just to open his mouth and call out Moran's name. Then, he couldn't hold back his sobs anymore and it overflowed from his lips. Moran murmured as he walked forward. He walked to his side, knelt down and hugged him tightly. What's wrong? Why are you crying? As he spoke, he lowered his head and stroked Chu Wanning's hair. Chu Wanning's body was very cold, but now that he had found him and was able to hold him in his arms, Moran felt very warm in his heart. His every moment of peace was stolen and every word he could say to Chu Wanning was a charity of the heavens. If he could get a little bit more, he would treat it as a treasure and wouldn't dare to take it lightly. It's all right. He was clearly so helpless, but he still hugged Chu Wanning in his broad and warm chest and comforted him. It's all right, I'm here. I'm here, I'm with you. As Moran spoke, he kissed Chu Wanning's forehead. At this moment, he suddenly realized that Chu Wanning, who was lying in his arms and was obviously trying to restrain himself, was still trembling and crying. His fingers were clutching his lapels tightly. He looked very much like that little Shidi in the Peach Blossom Spring who would never appear again. No one was born strong, and Chu Wanning should also have been like that when he was young. Mo Ran's heart trembled as he vaguely understood something. As he hugged the slightly trembling Chu Wanning, he kept kissing him and stroking his hair while looking at Master Huizhui. The old monk was sitting on a huge, cold rock. His brows were furrowed and his eyelashes were drooping. His eyes were half closed and there was no light in them. He was holding a branch of hatang flower in his hand and leaning it forward slightly, as if he was going to give it to someone. But that person must have rejected his good intentions. The flower had already withered and only a few had yet to wither from the branch. Master Huizhui had passed away. This person, who was behind many myths and mysteries, didn't have any relief on his face even at the last moment. His expression was pained. What was even more unbearable was that after he died, his face no longer retained the youthful appearance of a 30-something-year-old. He had completely turned into an old monk with thorny skin. And for some reason, his face was being eaten at a speed visible to the naked eye by a small golden worm. This worm. It's a false worm. Chu Wanning finally spoke, but his voice was frighteningly hoarse. Some people who loathe their appearance will make a blood contract with this worm. The false worm can change the host's appearance and in return, on the day the host dies, the false worm will devour the host's entire body. Hearing him do his best to maintain a steady tone as he slowly spoke, Mo Ran couldn't help but hug him even tighter. The person in his arms had probably been kneeling here for a very, very long time. His hands and feet were ice cold. From his previous life to this one, it had always been Chu Wanning who had been his lighthouse, his flame, dispelling the darkness and giving him warmth as much as he could. But at this moment, Mo Ran only felt like the person in his arms was made of ice. He was so cold. His heart ached. I'm here, I'm with you. He had been asking me to come to Mount Longxiu for a long time. Chu Wanning seemed extremely exhausted, as if someone had drained all of his warm blood and poured endless pain and suffering into him. He knew that I didn't want to talk to him face to face and didn't want to listen to any of his explanations, so he left me a letter. The letter was filled with sincere words, but I was stubborn. I wasn't willing to believe him. I was suspicious of him. Mo Ran stroked his cheeks. He had never seen Chu Wanning like this before. Not even in his previous life. He couldn't help but feel apprehensive. He asked, just what happened? But Chu Wanning only answered blankly, I was suspicious of him. This person who had always been calm and rational finally shattered. He was like a drawn bow whose string had been stretched to the limit and then suddenly snapped. He trembled in Mo Ran's arms, unable to stop shaking. He was so upset, so pitiful. Chu Wanning curled up. Once a person who had been tense for half a lifetime collapsed, the accumulated grief was enough to burst a dam. I should have come here long ago. If I had listened to him, many things wouldn't have happened. Nangongsi wouldn't have died, Shi Mei wouldn't have been blind. Originally, we could have made it in time, we could have made it in time. Shizun. If I had listened to that letter, things wouldn't have turned out like this. Mo Ran spent a while comforting him. After a long time, Chu Wanning finally stopped crying, but his eyes were unfocused. Mo Ran pinched his fingertips, but found that they couldn't be warmed up. Just like how those fingertips wouldn't stop their slight trembling. Why wasn't I willing to believe him once more? Mo Ran listened in silence. On his way here, because of Taxian Jun, Mo Ran had actually imagined countless scenarios of how his meeting with Chu Wanning again would go. He had thought of many explanations and pleas. However, he found that they were all useless. He didn't expect that when they meet again, it would be this kind of situation. He, also left a memory scroll. In the end, Chu Wanning finally calmed down. Mo Ran touched his cheek, which was cold. Before he left, he always hoped that you would come and he could personally give it to you. Hearing that it was related to him, Mo Ran's fingers froze. A memory scroll? What was in there? What did Master Huizhui know? Mo Ran felt that his hand was starting to become cold. His hair stood on end. He was so cold that it penetrated his bones. Chu Wanning said hoarsely, "But he can't wait any longer. His lifespan has come to an end." When he finished speaking, he seemed to have touched upon an extremely painful scar. He furrowed his brows and didn't say anything else. He was probably afraid that if he said another word, he would break down again. Chu Wanning covered his eyes with his arm. He calmed himself down and slowly tidied up himself. Calm, peaceful, cold, reliable. He picked up the pieces and slowly put himself back together. After all, he wasn't used to being weak. In the end, Chu Wanning raised his teary eyes. He took out the scroll from his chest and handed it to Mo Ran. "This contains all the secrets he knew." Mo Ran's voice trembled slightly. "Did he show it to you?" "Yes." Mo Ran's heart shook. He looked into Chu Wanning's eyes. In that moment, he had an extremely terrifying thought. He felt that Chu Wanning seemed to have understood everything. He took the painting scroll with green jade as the axis. He suddenly felt uneasy, so he suddenly held Chu Wanning's finger and caressed it. "Wanning. If that person on Mount Xiao, if what he said to you was true, would you hate me?" Chu Wanning's face was already very pale. At this time, it was completely drained of color. Even his lips were slightly blue. "Would you hate me?" Mo Ran held his hand. The strength he exerted was so strong, so stubborn to the point of being brute. In contrast to that strength was the bitter pleading under his soft eyelashes. "Should I?" Chu Wanning shook his head and didn't answer. He closed his eyes. "Look at the scroll." The scroll left behind by Master Huizhui was very heavy with yin energy. It was not similar to the spells of the mortal world. Instead, it was the same as the illusory creation realm of the feathered tribe from Peach Blossom's spring. Mo Ran took a deep look at Chu Wanning again. Then, he opened the scroll and pressed the scroll that was emitting a jade light between his eyebrows. The scene of Mount Longxiu disappeared. What followed was a bottomless darkness. In the darkness, Master Huizhui's voice sounded with a hint of sigh, echoing in Mo Ran's ears. "Grand Master Chu, Benefactor Mo, I know that I don't have much time left. But now that the world has changed and a great disaster is about to befall, if I don't do my best to tell the two of you what I know to help you, I will regret it in purgatory." The voice paused for a moment and then slowly continued. "The memories in this scroll is all unimaginable. It even included this monk's past misdeeds that could not be concealed. I know that during my lifetime, I have sinned deeply in the past. In addition, I'm slow-witted and narrow-minded. In these 200 years of life, the days when I'm awake can be counted on one hand. The good deeds I've done are also pitifully few. The sin I have committed was so grave that I cannot be redeemed. After I die, I will fall into the infinite hell and would never be reincarnated. However, I still have extravagant hopes that after the two of you read it, you won't hate me too much and think that I'm worse than a beast." Mo Ran's eyes gradually lit up. He blinked. As far as his eyes could see, there were broken walls, old trees, and crows. There were flocks of birds pecking at eyeballs and guts all around. He was slightly stunned. He felt that the scene was very familiar, but he couldn't remember it. Until the dust at the city gate flew and a group of people galloped over. They were wearing headbands, carrying feathered arrows and riding thin horses. One of the young men suddenly pulled on the reins and rolled off the horse. He rushed toward a corpse at the city gate while shouting, "Father! Father!" Mo Ran was shocked and felt a chill run on his spine. This is the illusion realm they were brought into back at the Peach Blossom's spring? Was this the same linen city in the flames of war? End chapter.